Ladies, let's get real. We've all been there, waiting for that one text, replaying his words to figure out what he really meant, convincing ourselves he's just confused or not ready. But guess what? Your heart is not a toy. And this isn't some romantic escape room where the prize is cracking his code. If you even suspect that a man is playing with your heart, then the game is already over. And the winner, once you wake up, wise up, and level up. So here it is, 7 bold ways to outsmart any man who thinks he can play you. You don't need to confront him, chase him, or fix him. You just need to shift the power back into your hands. When a man starts playing games with your heart, his first weapon is often confusion. He creates highs and lows, replying instantly one day, disappearing the next, compliments followed by cold silence, affection wrapped in unpredictability. And what do most people do? They react emotionally, desperately. They chase the highs, question the lows, and spiral in search of clarity. But here's the trick. Your power lies in not reacting, but in observing. Observation is not passive. It's an active choice to study instead of surrender. When you observe, you're gathering data, how he communicates, how he behaves when he doesn't get his way, how consistent or inconsistent he is, and whether his actions match his words. Most importantly, you begin to see patterns, not excuses. Reactions are emotional impulses. Observations are emotional intelligence in motion. The more you watch without jumping in, the more the truth reveals itself. See, when you react, you give away your energy. You send the message, your actions control my peace. But when you observe, you stay centered. You're not cold or indifferent. You're measured. He doesn't text for 3 days. You don't panic. He flirts with another woman online. You don't send a paragraph. You simply take note, mentally registering what kind of man he is and whether he fits the life you're building. It's not about pretending not to care. It's about choosing when to care and for whom. Players rely on your emotional response to feed their power. If they sense you're anxious, they know they have leverage. That's why silence and detachment are often more disarming than confrontation. Observing creates mystery. It shifts the dynamic. Suddenly, he's wondering what you're thinking, why you didn't respond, why you didn't chase. And in that shift, you reclaim the position of emotional leadership. You go from being a participant in his game to being the observer of your own peace. But here's what makes observation so powerful. It protects your self-respect. Instead of saying, how can I fix this? You ask, do I even want this? Instead of rewriting your boundaries for him, you reinforce them within yourself. You develop a calm strength that doesn't need dramatic exits or explosive texts. You let him reveal himself over time without interference. And when people reveal themselves, believe them. Don't interrupt the exposure with premature attachment. Lastly, observing gives you clarity without chaos. You get to see if his attention is real or strategic, if his affection is sincere or manipulative. You'll notice whether he steps up when you stop stepping in. And if he doesn't, good. You've just saved months of emotional labor. Because any man who's truly for you will make it clear without you needing to guess. The game ends the moment you stop reacting and start watching. Let's get one thing straight, matching his energy is not the same as matching his investment. A lot of advice out there tells you to mirror his energy. But what does that even mean? If he's acting cold, should you act cold too? If he pulls away, should you start playing hard to get? No, that's still reactive behavior. What you really want to do is match his level of investment, not his mood swings. Because energy can be fake, but investment never lies. So what does investment actually look like? It's consistency, effort, communication. It's not about grand gestures or sweet words once a week. It's about showing up. A man who's truly into you will invest in learning who you are, checking in with you regularly, planning things with you, and being emotionally available. So if you're texting him paragraphs and he's replying with one-liners, that's a mismatch. If you're rearranging your life to see him and he can't even confirm dinner plans, another mismatch. Matching investment means being fair to yourself. If he's only giving 30%, why are you giving 100% hoping it'll balance out? That's not love, that's over-functioning. And over-functioning is what allows players to thrive. You're doing the emotional labor, the planning, the forgiving, the explaining, all while he gets to remain vague and inconsistent. When you match his investment, you're not punishing him, you're just creating alignment. And alignment is how real connections grow. There's also something deeply attractive about a woman who doesn't overextend. When you give just enough to reflect what you're receiving, you communicate self-respect. You're not desperate, you're deliberate. You're not cold, you're clear. It shows him that your time, energy are valuable and that you don't offer intimacy on a discount. You teach people how to treat you not through ultimatums, but through your boundaries in action. It's easy to get caught up in the chemistry, especially in the early stages when everything feels exciting. But chemistry without consistency is just chaos in a pretty package. If a man is inconsistent and you continue showing up full force, you're not showing loyalty. You're showing a lack of self-boundaries. Love isn't about proving you're worthy by doing the most. It's about seeing if the effort is mutual before you go all in. Hold back where he holds back, not to manipulate, but to protect. Ultimately, when you match investment, you stop negotiating your standards in exchange for temporary attention. You stop hoping that one day he'll wake up and realize how good you've been to him. Instead, you calmly assess, is this man showing up in a way that meets me where I am? If not, you slow down. You pull back with grace, not bitterness. Because the right man won't need to be chaste. He'll meet you at your level and never leave you questioning whether you're doing too much or too little. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: often we aren't attached to the man. We're attached to the fantasy of who we think he could be. The idea of him. The version of him we created in our minds based on little crumbs of potential he's occasionally shown us. It's that fantasy that keeps us stuck, not the reality of how he's actually showing up in our lives. And until you detach from the fantasy, you'll keep chasing a version of love that doesn't exist. It usually starts small. A sweet moment here, a deep conversation there, a few charming words that feel like promises. And boom, your mind takes off. You imagine what it would be like if he just tried a little harder, communicated a little more, or finally realized you're the one. You fill in the blanks with hope instead of facts. But here's the thing: fantasies feel good, but they're emotionally expensive. Because every time you invest in that illusion, you disconnect further from the truth. The truth might be that he's inconsistent. The truth might be that he only calls when it's convenient. The truth might be that he's not emotionally available, or worse, not even interested in anything serious. But instead of seeing those red flags, the fantasy turns them into misunderstandings or phases. You excuse his behavior because you're so in love with who he could be that you forget who he actually is right now in front of you. And that's dangerous, because the longer you stay attached to the fantasy, the more blind you become to the emotional toll it takes on you. You start overcompensating, overthinking, overgiving, trying to force reality to match the story in your head. You lose sleep over someone who hasn't earned your tears. You give your loyalty to someone who hasn't even committed. And all of this happens because the fantasy is more comforting than the truth. But comfort isn't clarity. Detaching from the fantasy doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start seeing clearly. It means you stop chasing potential and start measuring patterns. It means you start asking better questions like, how do I feel when I'm around him? Am I becoming the best version of myself, or am I constantly feeling unsure, unseen, and unsettled? A real connection won't live in your imagination. It will live in reality with someone who is present, not just promising. So when you find yourself slipping into that dream version of him, the one where he suddenly commits, changes, or gives you everything you need, pause, breathe, and come back to the facts. Ask yourself, is he showing up for me in a way that matches the future I want? If the answer is no, then it's time to let go of the illusion, not out of bitterness, but out of deep, unshakable self-love. because the love you're imagining. You deserve to feel that in real life, and you will with someone who doesn't need to be fixed to give it. Let's make one thing clear. You are not in a competition. If a man is entertaining multiple women, making you feel like you're one option on a rotating list, or treating your presence like it's disposable, your job is not to try harder, look better, or fight for his attention. That's not empowerment, that's emotional scarcity. And you weren't made to shrink yourself into someone's preference. You were made to curate your life so powerfully that anyone not aligned simply filters themselves out. When you compete, you're stepping into his frame. You're responding to his distractions. You're playing by his rules. But when you curate, you're in your own frame. You're not looking sideways to see who else he's talking to. You're looking forward, building a life that reflects your value, purpose, and peace. That kind of self-focus is magnetic. It says, I am the experience. I don't chase. I attract what is aligned. And trust me, the right people will feel that without you saying a word. A man who's truly ready for you won't put you in a position to compete. He won't dangle other women in front of you to test your loyalty. He won't be hot and cold just to keep you emotionally hooked. If he does, it's not a relationship, it's a game, and the moment you recognize it, you have a choice: keep playing or start curating. Curating means asking, is this person adding to the peace, purpose, and power I've cultivated in my life? If not, he's not worth your energy. The truth is, when you start curating your life, not just your appearance, but your goals, your space, your standards, your circle, you become undeniable. You become the kind of woman who doesn't chase approval because she's too busy honoring her own. And guess what? That woman doesn't care how many other women he's texting, because she knows any man who makes her feel like an option is automatically disqualified. She doesn't fight to stay. She chooses to leave. It's easy to get caught up in comparison, especially with social media constantly showcasing polished versions of other women. But what's meant for you can't be stolen by someone else. And what can be taken from you was never yours to begin with. So stop checking who liked his photo. Stop analyzing his stories. Every second spent competing is a second stolen from your own growth, joy, and peace. That energy is better spent on you. Your mindset, your passions, your boundaries. Remember this: a queen doesn't enter petty battles. She doesn't lower herself to prove her place in someone else's life. She builds her own kingdom. And in that kingdom, only those who know how to lead with integrity, loyalty, and emotional maturity are welcome. Let others scramble for attention. You're over here curating a life so beautiful, so whole, that anyone who isn't ready for you feels it instantly and either rises to meet you or quietly disappears. There comes a moment when you can no longer keep quiet, when the inconsistencies, the subtle disrespect, the emotional tug of war become too loud to ignore. But here's where most people fall into the trap. They either explode with anger or silently tolerate the behavior. You don't need to do either. There's a third, far more powerful option: call it out calmly, confidently, and without ever losing your class. That's how a high-value woman protects her peace. Not with rage, but with resolve. Calling someone out doesn't have to look like confrontation. It looks like clarity. It sounds like, hey, I notice when you say one thing and do another. It makes me feel unsure. And I don't do well in that kind of space. No shouting, no accusations. Just truth delivered with strength and composure. When you speak from a grounded place, you don't just call out the behavior. You expose the standard you hold for yourself. And that's way more powerful than any emotional outburst. See, when you raise your voice or start pleading, you give him a way to dismiss you as emotional or too sensitive. But when you stay poised, articulate your boundary, and refuse to lower your tone, you leave no room for manipulation. Your calm becomes his discomfort. Your restraint becomes his mirror. A man can only play games with a woman who stays in them. Once you stand still in your truth, he either steps up or fades away. Both are answers. This isn't about being passive-aggressive or playing it cool to impress him. This is about embodying your self-worth so fully that you refuse to engage in anything that dishonors it. If he flakes, you don't beg for an explanation. You point it out once and then adjust how much access he has to you. If he crosses a boundary, you don't wait for it to happen again. You express how it made you feel and make it clear what you expect moving forward. You don't make demands. You declare standards. What happens when you speak with class and clarity? You instantly separate yourself from the noise. He realizes you're not the kind of woman who argues to be heard. You simply walk if you're not respected. You don't entertain confusion. You don't trade your dignity for closure. Your silence after you've made your point becomes louder than any shouting match could ever be. That's not ego. That's emotional elegance. That's the kind of energy that teaches without yelling and commands without trying. So remember, the power isn't in being loud. It's in being unbothered yet direct. Don't let his games turn you into someone you're not. Be the woman who can call someone out without bitterness, defend her boundaries without aggression, and speak truth without apology. Because the moment you learn to express what you feel without losing who you are, you stop trying to prove your worth and start living like you already know it. There is a silent strength that many underestimate. The strength to walk away, not halfway, not with one foot still in, but fully, cleanly, and without seeking validation for doing so. When you finally stop accepting the bare minimum, when you stop staying in confusing situations just because they ooze to be good, you reclaim one of the most powerful positions a woman can hold: emotional freedom. Walking away isn't weakness. It's a declaration that you will no longer settle for anything that leaves you guessing. The reason so many women stay longer than they should is hope. Hope that he'll change. Hope that things will go back to how they were at the beginning. Hope that the potential she once saw will finally become real. But hope without consistent effort from both sides turns into self-abandonment. Every time you overlook a red flag, every time you justify his lack of effort, you're sending a silent message: my peace can wait. And the truth is, it shouldn't. Not for anyone. When a man senses that you're not willing to walk away, he knows he can play with your boundaries. He knows he can do just enough to keep you from leaving, but not enough to fully commit. This is where the cycle of emotional manipulation lies. But once you truly become unavailable to that dynamic, once you're prepared to fully disconnect, the game ends. Not because he stopped playing, but because you stopped participating. And let's be honest, walking away is painful. It's the quiet, private kind of pain that doesn't get applause, but it's also the most transformative pain you will ever experience. It's the kind of pain that refines you, that strengthens your backbone, and that teaches you the difference between love and attachment. There will be moments where you second guess yourself, where loneliness tries to seduce you back into settling. But remember, peace doesn't always feel good at first. Sometimes it's just the absence of chaos. The key is walking away without needing closure, without needing him to understand, without waiting for him to finally get it. You don't need him to agree with your decision for it to be the right one. You don't need his blessing to move on. Your self-worth is not dependent on his realization. Sometimes closure isn't a conversation. It's a decision, a silent, sacred decision to choose yourself even when your heart still whispers for him. Being willing to walk away fully means you no longer beg for clarity, affection, or consistency. You no longer shrink yourself to keep someone's interest. You simply observe the effort, and if it doesn't match your standard, you move, not with bitterness, but with grace. Because deep down, you know, a man who truly wants you will never put you in a position where you have to wonder if you should stay. And the moment you choose peace over potential, confusion over clarity, you begin to rise into a version of yourself that no one can play with again. Love is not supposed to feel like a guessing game. It's not supposed to tie your stomach in knots, keep you checking your phone every 5 minutes, or have you questioning your worth every time you're left on read. Real love healthy love, creates emotional safety, not emotional suspense. And yet, too many women mistake anxiety for attraction. The adrenaline rush of uncertainty, the highs and lows of mixed signals, the chaos of not knowing where you stand. It becomes addictive. But let's be honest, that's not chemistry, that's emotional instability. A man who is emotionally secure will never make you compete with your own peace. He will communicate clearly, show up consistently, and respect your boundaries without needing reminders. You won't have to decode his texts or wait 3 days for him to decide if you're worth a reply. You'll feel calm in his presence, not like you're on trial for his affection. If someone constantly triggers your nervous system, that's not passion. That's your intuition trying to warn you. Don't ignore it just because the moments of validation feel good when they finally come. Women often grow up being taught to earn love. Be more agreeable, be more patient, give more chances. But let's rewrite that. You don't earn love by sacrificing your emotional well-being. You receive love by being emotionally available to those who are emotionally capable. And if someone's behavior constantly leaves you feeling unsure, small, or unseen, that's your cue to disinvest. You don't owe your emotional energy to someone who can't handle it with care. Safety in a relationship doesn't mean it's boring. It means you're not operating in survival mode. You're not bracing yourself for disappointment. You're not constantly preparing for the next wave of silence or mixed signals. Instead, you get to be soft. You get to relax. You get to express yourself fully without fear of being dismissed, mocked, or ignored. That kind of safety doesn't just protect your heart. It lets you thrive. And when you thrive, you attract relationships that align with your highest self, not your most wounded self. Many women stay with men who make them feel anxious because they confuse unpredictability with passion. But let's be clear, a man who truly cares will not leave your emotions on read. He will give you peace of mind, not pieces of himself. And once you experience a connection that's built on trust, transparency, and emotional availability, you'll never again settle for a love that feels like a test. You'll stop finding excitement in uncertainty and start finding value in stability. So start watching how your body feels around him. Do you feel calm or do you feel tense? Do you feel empowered or are you constantly shrinking? Emotional safety isn't a luxury. It's a requirement. You deserve to be loved in a way that doesn't compromise your inner peace. You deserve someone who doesn't confuse your heart, but honors it. And until a man shows up with that kind of presence, that kind of certainty, that kind of consistency, he doesn't get access to your softness, your loyalty, or your time. There is a shift that happens when a woman stops trying to be chosen and starts choosing herself. It's not loud. It doesn't require a dramatic announcement. It doesn't come with ultimatums, tears, or even conversations. It happens quietly, in how she no longer responds to the bare minimum, in how she no longer explains why she deserves more, in how she simply decides that her energy is no longer available for anything that makes her feel small. That's what upgrading your standard looks like: internal, subtle, and deeply powerful. Upgrading your standard doesn't mean you become cold or closed off. It means you become clear. It means you stop entertaining people who don't show up fully. It means you no longer negotiate your non-negotiables or overextend yourself just to keep someone interested. The new standard says, I don't need to prove I'm worthy. I don't need to explain what I bring to the table. If you can't see it, that's your loss, not my job. There's a peace that comes with no longer trying to convince anyone of your value. This upgrade happens when you've finally had enough of your own patterns. The times you overgave, stayed too long, hoped too hard, or tolerated too much. At some point, you stop blaming them for playing games and start asking yourself, why did I keep playing along? And in that moment of accountability, you rise. Not for revenge, not to show anyone what they missed, but because you're no longer available for the version of you that accepted less. That version doesn't live here anymore. When you upgrade your standard, you don't chase closure. You don't chase answers. You don't post to prove that you've moved on. You're too busy actually moving on. You're focused on rebuilding yourself in silence, nurturing your peace, reclaiming your time, and creating a life that reflects your elevated mindset. The men who once confused you, they no longer have access to you. Not because you blocked them, but because you outgrew them. They can't reach you where you've evolved to. And the beauty of upgrading your standard quietly is that no one sees it coming. They think you're the same until they try to reach you and realize you're not available in the way you used to be. The late night texts get ignored. The breadcrumbing gets no reaction. The same old excuses that once got them back in the door now fall flat. And the most powerful part, you don't even have to explain why. You've shifted internally, and your silence speaks volumes. This kind of growth doesn't scream. It doesn't post quotes. It doesn't clap back. It just stops showing up where it's no longer being met with respect, effort, and consistency. You don't rise to prove. You rise because you're done playing in environments that drain you. You upgrade quietly, and suddenly, everything about you changes. How you speak, how you move, how you carry yourself. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you finally believe in your worth enough to live by it.